Look at that. I have never felt so torn in half by a video game in my entire life. I don't know whether I should feel like super excited for the future of World of Warcraft or if I should like go ahead and cancel my subscription now before things get any weirder. Now, I've been kind of a massive apologist and copium taker about World of Warcraft for like 2/3 of my 32-year-old life. And during that time, Blizzard really has put out a ton of amazing, memorable, special content and experiences within the game. But they've also made a lot of terrible, questionable, and infuriating decisions in that same time. So the two things that are eating me up and that I want to talk about today are player housing, which has pretty unanimously been accepted and celebrated as a really, really good thing. And then the announcement of some really controversial new UI systems and tools that are going to be added in the upcoming patch. Now, before we dig in, you should definitely understand that I am more of a casual when it comes to WoW and all video games, really. And when it comes to modern WoW and the war within, I've honestly felt very seen and very thought about. I am not a sweat, and these opinions are not coming from the standpoint of somebody who can pour tons and tons of hours into the game. Maybe someday I'll get back there, but that's not today. So let's start with the good news. Player housing and some more and new details about how that's going to work and how it's going to affect the culture and the feel and the heart of World of Warcraft moving forward. I really think that this is a huge step in the right direction for WoW. With the last several expansions of World of Warcraft, it's really seemed like it's been optimized into this like streamlined, modernized, quick experience from level 1 to 80 straight into endgame content with not really much in between and not really any need to visit any other content, old or new, other than what is in the current expansion. You never really have to leave your expansion's capital city. There's no reason to return to Stormwind or Ironforge or the Undercity. There's mounts with auctioneers and banks and mailboxes and repair shops and reagent vendors. And a massive part of that intrigue with WoW had to do with actually needing to physically travel and explore and see the world with your character. And nowadays, it really comes down a lot of the time to like staring at menus and like waiting for queues or looking for that group for Mythic Plus. And again, this is speaking as somebody who's not in like an organized raiding guild who has like a schedule of getting together with real humans and going to a raid and doing it. And so with less of that and less travel and less need to see the vast majority of the world on any given day, or not even the vast majority, just like more than 3 zones and more than the capital city, there's a lot less immersion. There's a lot less RP in the MMORPG. And for many people, myself included, less heart in the overall experience. So turning around to the good news, when they describe this player housing system as being something that's going to be a little slower, a little wider reaching in terms of where you'll need to go to collect these items, different vendors that are going to be widely spread, maybe not even widely known. You're going to have to go more places, do more things, get more reputation or factions that you may not have explored before, all in order to get those new or rare or undiscovered items for your home in-game. There was a little twinkle in my eye that popped up because it really started to feel like and sound like it was a little bit of a dip back into the water of that older school WoW feel. If you want to engage in decking out your player housing, you will need to physically move your character to these places. Find these unique vendors, complete these unique and new quests in various zones, various regions, various expansions that you haven't visited in a long time or maybe ever in my case. Just creating generally more of that exploratory feel rather than what ends up being the experience at Cap a lot of times, which is staring at a menu waiting for queue in the capital city. Here's another part of good news with this system. For the most part, kind of seems like it's going to be optional. The endgame sweats who don't really care about whether or not their carpet matches their drapes won't have to spend time doing that in order to continue playing the game the way that they want to. They can continue to min-max everything and parse and all these terms that I'm not even exactly sure if I'm using right, but they don't have to spend the time getting back into the world and doing these things that, to me, as a casual and old school WoW player, seems to be like really exciting. I'm talking about those of us who felt like a little bit left behind and like the game that we fell in love with 10, 20 years ago is kind of nothing but a ghost in the shell of what modern WoW currently is. And all of that just feels really, really good. I feel like everybody's winning here. So with the game as old and still massive as WoW, and with the industry as weird and tumultuous as it has been over the last decade, it really seems like Blizzard is tapping into something that's super positive here, and that maybe, just maybe, could be a turning point for WoW and a solidification that they're starting to make the right decisions and seeing what players want and creating an experience that everyone can get behind and totally respect. Hang on. What the hell is that?
Oh, that's the bad news of this video.
So to the absolute surprise to myself and almost everyone else that I've seen react to this story, Blizzard has announced 2 new UI features that are meant to reduce players' dependency on external add-ons to play the game in the way that they want to or that they think is optimized. And these are Combat Assistant and Single Button Assistant.
The one button automation rotisserie chicken, baby.
Like, does anyone like that idea? I feel like that's just terrible.
You will be told by your raid leader, just turn on the one button mode.
Blizzard's got your back.
You could play WoW fucking blackout hammered. That's what I'm thinking. Holy shit.
You don't want to play the fucking game anymore.
You're not going to be able to raid with it. You're not going to be able to do Mythic Plus with it.
Click one button, Andy, and you fucking got it.
Borderline AI playing your character for you is like, this is kind of crossing the line for me.
You just go explore, adventurer, because that's all we want you to focus on.
And I'm sorry to like break the script for a second, but like, what the fuck are we doing? I was under the impression that outside of like Cookie Clicker and like Raid Shadow Legends, that you played video games in order to explore the system within that game so that you could be proud of being at the start somebody who was a complete idiot in the game to being somebody who was like just a little bit of a smarter idiot within the game. Like, are you actually telling me that there were people asking for an option in World of Warcraft, a game that for 20 years has been celebrated for its diversity of class design, layers of complexity, its potentially long learning curve, where they could essentially put the game on autoplay? And then, are you telling me that Blizzard heard this and said, okay.
Oh, okay.
Am I crazy? Is that not like absolutely crazy? Like, is it just me? There are a very select few ways that I could actually see this system implemented as a positive thing. Implications for accessibility with this system.
This is for accessibility purposes.
Great. Rock and roll. I love that actually. So accessibility, yes. But those are not the only people that are going to use this system and not the only people that Blizzard intends to use this system.
That it's there for people who maybe just honestly aren't interested in the gameplay of like mastering their spec. They want to explore Azeroth and experience the story, and the mechanics kind of get in the way of that sometimes.
I also see a way that this system could be implemented that would be less existentially like damaging to World of Warcraft as a game, where perhaps there's a separate zone or a separate training ground where you can take your character, turn this mode on, sort of watch the rotation as it goes through, feel out the rotation as it goes through, and then apply those skills later in a dynamic context. And then I'll take just one more step into being devil's advocate for Single Button Assistant here and say, maybe if from release and off rip, we were saying this is a system that can be used from level 1 to level 80. It can be used through regular 5-man content at level 80. But once you get into heroics, once you get into raids, that option is no longer available. That would ensure that people would actually have to learn their class and be competent enough to hit some of that higher level content, where your average player is probably going to be at that higher interest level of optimizing their performance anyway. But if somebody who does use this system and has always used this system finally does get into a group, there's no way that a group or a raid leader serious about finding success isn't going to require that system be implemented for that person if their manual DPS output doesn't outdo that line. And again, to me, that 0.2 second global cooldown still doesn't feel expensive enough of a trade-off to justify turning your World of Warcraft experience into like a glorified auto battler or cookie clicker. I swear, I still feel crazy for saying this, But does this not kill the point of playing the game? And I guess, like, to each their own. Nobody has to use this system. There's going to be, I would say, the vast majority of people who don't use this system. I think when Dragonflight hit, we really saw the pendulum sort of swing in the other direction after a handful of expansions that were overly complex, overly time-gated, overly serious and sweaty, into something that was much more casual friendly. And the War Within, I think, takes that multiple steps further. But this new feature, to me, is something that takes that pendulum and swings it right off of the clock, killing thousands of World of Warcraft fans in the process. And it's too damn much. Like I said, I am a casual. I am a fan of developers keeping us in mind and implementing systems and making the experience such that we can enjoy it as much, maybe differently though, than the more serious players do. But I just don't know if anybody wanted this. So the player housing announcement was a smash hit, and it had me seriously excited about allocating more time into World of Warcraft in the future, what time that I do have and can invest into Midnight when it releases. But then this dropping of the single button assistant has me really wondering if in the future we're going to see more decisions and implementations that are going to lead WoW into a cheaper, less authentic, easier, less valuable experience and product. So I've got some wrestling to do in my head about this myself, but my question to you is, how did you react to both of these pieces of news? The player housing, was it something that you were waiting for and you're super stoked for given the new information? And the single button assist and other UI changes. Do you think it's warranted, that it's about time, that it's going to help people move away from add-ons? Or like me, do you fucking not understand why they would ever consider this to be a good idea? Or maybe does it not make a difference to you at all since you're never even going to look at that button? Let me know. We'll see you next time.